More injuries in the land of FPL to the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold and to Jared Bowen, on top of both Salah and Son leaving for international tournaments. So a lot of us are looking at multiple transfers this week, potential -4s. Today, I'm going to take you through those top players to buy. We'll have a deep dive into midfielders because that's where a lot of the transfers are being used, but we will cover some forwards and defenders as well. Welcome back everyone, FPL Harry here. 1,000 likes on the video is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. But top transfer targets time. Again, yesterday I was putting the graphics together for this on Tuesday, and now I look and I had to redo them because of a few injuries and doubts to a lot of the players that we're considering owning in our FPL teams this week, and just generally my own in our teams already. So of course, game week 21 is the week where Salah and Son, Kudus, Hwang Hee-chan, a few other highly owned players go away to their international tournaments in the Asia Cup and in the African Cup of Nations respectively. So we were already looking at potentially making moves, and it was then added to with a little bit of doubt about a few players' fitness and a little bit of injury news as well. So to start off with Haaland and De Bruyne. So Haaland didn't feature for Manchester City at all in the Cup. He hasn't played any Premier League football for almost a month now. It does seem more and more unlikely that he's going to be thrown in to start against Newcastle. He has been training, but I don't think we can start Haaland unless we get a leak that he is going to start on Friday potentially in the deadline stream leading up to into the deadline. So if you are potentially looking at bringing in Erling Haaland, please wait until Friday. Do not be making early moves. He's had, I think, 300 or 400,000 transfers in already this week, and we don't even know if he's available to start that game. Similar for Kevin De Bruyne. Kevin De Bruyne has been getting minutes. However, he has come out himself, as has Pep Guardiola, basically said that he doesn't expect to be starting games this weekend and he expects to be back on the bench against Newcastle. Again, De Bruyne is one of the most bought players this week, and we don't expect him to start this game week. So again, unless we get confirmation that De Bruyne is going to start, I predict that he'd probably be on the bench for Manchester City against Newcastle, and he can be brought on to help them in the later stages of the game if they need him. Now, two others who are maybe more recent injuries and more recent news that we got on Tuesday. First of all is Trent Alexander-Arnold, who seems to be ruled out for a few weeks. Now, that could be anything from 1 week of FPL up to maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks of FPL with a bit of a knee injury. The good news on Trent is that game week 22, the one after this, Liverpool don't actually play for about 3 weeks from today in that week, because there is another round of FA Cup fixtures. There is, of course, the winter break, and then there is a midweek round of fixtures. So Trent, although he's going to miss game week 21 by the looks of it, might be back by game week 22. So don't go buying Trent, but he's probably a hold if you own him, and maybe make transfers elsewhere and around in your team so you can bench Trent this week. The other one is Jared Bowen. Jared Bowen went off with a slight knock. Well, we thought was a slight knock at the end of their FA Cup game, but it sounds like he's going to be out for a fair amount of time, along with his West Ham teammate in Lucas Paqueta as well. So with that bearing in mind, again, Bowen has had almost 750,000 transfers in this week as well. You might be forced to sell him if you've already brought him in this week, because it doesn't look like he's going to feature probably in game week 21, probably in game week 22 and 23 as well. If you want to bench him this week and wait and see if we get any more injury news going into West Ham's upcoming game in game week 22, then that's fine. But it doesn't look like he's going to feature in game week 21. So we're going to spend most of today's video looking at midfielders, but just to cover off quickly a defender, probably the most bought defender I imagine going into the deadline, and with Trent's injury is going to become even more popular. For me, that is Pervis Estupinan of Brighton. It's probably no surprise that he is the one that I'm talking about. We do have a differential list later on in the video which does have a cheaper defender if you are looking for one, but the Brighton fixtures over the next 6 do look really nice. Some of the best fixtures in FPL at the moment. He's come back from injury and has got a goal for them, and they also got another goal in the FA Cup as well. 4.9 million with that run of fixtures. Brighton have only kept 1 clean sheet so far this season, which is probably what is putting people off buying him a little bit. However, their defensive record in Europe has actually been really good. They've kept several clean sheets against some great European opponents like Ajax. So I wouldn't necessarily be put off massively by their clean sheet return so far in the Premier League. With the upcoming fixtures that they've got, with the attacking threat that they've got, I do think Estupinan is the #1 defender to buy this week, given that Trent is ruled out. And now moving on to midfielders. First of all, I apologize. I never put data tables in my videos, but it's very hard to do this without one. I know I also need to work on making a data table look nicer than it does in this one, but there was so much I needed to cover that I thought this was probably the best and easiest way to go and do it. So what we've got is a selection of some of the most talked about midfielders in FPL at the moment, and potentially some of their key stats, and highlighted the top 3 for each of them. The first thing that stands out for me here, if you don't own Cole Palmer, he should be the #1 asset that you should be going and buying. He still is the best asset. Of course, Chelsea played in the Cup on Tuesday evening, but 5.6 million with the upcoming fixtures they've got, he's the best midfielder that we can go and buy at the moment for minutes per expected goal involvement. He's expected to get an FPL return every 112 minutes. With the added time that we're getting in the Premier League at the moment, that's basically 1 every game. Second is Saka. Now, Saka is not massively talked about because so many of us already own him. Arsenal have been disappointing in recent weeks. They definitely have. However, if you don't own Saka, there's enough things that put me off a lot of the options lower down this list that I still think buying Bukayo Saka is still something that I would want to do. We're not going to deep dive into Saka later on in the video, but I do still think the way he comes out for minutes per appearance, right, he's always going to start. He's always going to get almost 90 minutes. Top 3 for goals, up there for assists as well, up there for most FPL points scored, up there for minutes per expected goals involved so far this season as well. So despite the Arsenal form recently, the data would suggest that if you don't own Saka, go and buy him. And if you don't own Cole Palmer, go and buy him. Now, a lot of us already own both of them, which is why we are looking at a bit of an extended list. There are a few players that do stand out for me here. We've got some cheaper ones. To cover them off quickly, Garnacho and Alanga, probably the 2 sub 5 million ones. If you need the money, Garnacho does stand out. Just look at those minutes per shots in the box for him. 3 basically expected every game that he's going to play. At least 2, which is much better than Alanga. Now, Alanga does have much more assist threat, but Garnacho's goal threat with the upcoming Manchester United fixtures is one that I really like. To pull out a few others in here, Richarlison. Richarlison's data is so good. There is a little bit of an eye test thing, which with Timo Werner, is he going to be quite as good? Without Son, how are Spurs going to be? Plus game week 26 is predicted to be a blank for Spurs and Chelsea, along with Liverpool and Luton for the Carabao Cup final. So if you are buying Richarlison, you may have an issue on your hands when game week 26 does roll around, but short term, he probably is the standout option. Next up is Phil Foden. Now, Foden doesn't actually massively stand out when you look at some of the data. His FPL returns have been okay. His minutes per start are okay. His minutes per expected goal return is okay. Not massively eye-turning data compared to some of the others on this list. However, when you watch Manchester City play, and this is where some of you will want data, some of you will want eye test, I just love the way Phil Foden is playing at the moment. He scored again in the FA Cup for Manchester City, and they are predicted to have a double game week between now and game week 28. A reminder, there will be a chip strategy video at some point over the next couple of weeks, so make sure you subscribe for when that does come out. So I do like Foden, despite the data not being there. 2 others just to finally finish on. Diogo Jota. His data is really, really good for when he starts. If we expect him to start continuously over the next few weeks, then Jota is definitely an option. It's just how well you trust his minutes. And the final one actually is Anthony Gordon. If Newcastle didn't have Manchester City at home this week, we would all be buying Anthony Gordon. I already own him and I'm keeping him. But if you didn't own him, apart from the City fixture this week, he is another standout option that continues to return. We're not going to dive into him too much, but it is worth considering whether 1 week of Gordon against City is just worth going with the upcoming fixtures that they do have. So to dive into those a little bit more detail, to pull out my top 2 probably options that we've got. First of all is Richarlison. The upcoming fixtures are pretty good. United away in game week 21. We don't really know what we're going to get from United every single week, but I do think he is a good option. The outstanding data, as we saw in the previous one, almost 0.6 expected goals per 90, pretty much blows the rest of them out of the market if you do already own Palmer and own Saka. The upcoming fixtures are good. It is just that they might have a blank game week in game week 26 if Chelsea do get to the Carabao Cup final. That being said, the short-term fixtures are there. The FPL returns have been there. It's just what I think is going to happen without Son being there and him probably being replaced by Timo Werner. Next up is Phil Foden. It's up to 6.9 million, and now that there's no Bowen, is likely to be probably the most bought midfielder, or it'll be Richarlison. It'll be close between the two. Newcastle away this week is... You can write a narrative as you want for this fixture. Newcastle have leaked goals, but they are better at home. I do think Manchester City will get something from this game, and I do expect Foden to start centrally again behind Julian Alvarez, because it doesn't look like Haaland or De Bruyne are likely to start this game. With the upcoming fixtures they've got as well, it is really nice. They do play in the blank that is going to be game week 26. That will be a blank game week, but Manchester City are out of the Carabao Cup, so they will, of course, have a decent fixture away at Bournemouth in that one. He's an eye test player. He's looked so good for the past few games, and I expect him to continue to be highly involved for Manchester City over the next few weeks. And then to talk about Liverpool, to talk about their attack in general. So we've got a few forwards in here and a lot of midfielders as well. So of course, Salah has gone away to the African Cup of Nations, but he is still on here because it does impact the player you're going to buy, because when Salah comes back, probably in game week 24 or game week 25, it will have an impact on whether you're allowed or you're able to keep the midfielder you buy. If you go and buy Jota, Darwin, Luis Diaz, Harvey Elliott, for example, Gakpo, Salah will take his place on the right wing. Now, who is going to play right wing while Salah is away? Basically, it sounds like the 5 others you've got here will rotate. I don't see any of them starting all of game week 21, 22, 23 and 24 while Salah is away. You might get 3 starts. The only couple that might get 4 starts is Luis Diaz and Darwin, because those are the 2 players who were nailed before Salah went away. So the chances of them being dropped now that Salah is not there feels lower. Darwin is one that you either love or hate as an FPL asset, but he will get chances and he will continue to be involved for that Liverpool team. Luis Diaz feels like the safest option for minutes. He's started the most games out of any of these so far this season, but Jota is that explosive option. I just don't see Jota being nailed to play every week, which does concern me. And as soon as Salah comes back, Salah, Darwin, Luis Diaz will likely be the first choice front line again, which will make Jota a transfer out. So as much as I love Jota as a short-term punt, Luis Diaz feels like a safer option in that Liverpool attack. And then just to finish on a few differentials, the first up is Bruno Fernandes. Now, I've laughed at people for suggesting him, but he is a big differential. His ownership is so low, and some of the fixtures over the next few weeks are not bad. He got returns in the FA Cup again. Yes, it was against Wigan, a potentially easier opposition, but with the fixtures coming up on set pieces, on penalties, they're going to have to perform at some point. Surely they are. He could be an alright differential if you are considering a Manchester United option or don't want to go for the likes of Richarlison or Foden. The other one is another Manchester City option. It looks like Jeremy Doku is going to be back, and Pep favoured him a lot over Jack Grealish in the first half of the season, and maybe he'll go and do it again. You do have that slight risk of minutes with all of those City players being back. Will he want Doku? Will he want Grealish in there for a game? But if you fancy taking a punt on his minutes, he could be more explosive than the likes of Phil Foden, the likes of Alvarez, the likes of De Bruyne when he is back as well. And finally, a defender. If you can't afford a Estupinan, one that I do really like is Alfie Doughty at Luton. Been so good over the past few weeks. As a Chelsea fan, I watched him almost steal points of us in game week 20. The fixtures coming up are nice. Plus, if Liverpool get to the cup final, they'll have a blank in game week 26, but also will have a double game week at some point. Probably in game week 25 is where that is predicted to go. Again, I will cover all the double game week, blank game week stuff in a video coming next week. Don't massively need to worry about it this week. But if you are looking for a cheap defender this week, he is probably the one I would go with at 4.4. So this is normally the week of midfielders. If you are looking for defenders, Estupinan and Doherty are there. We've covered a lot of the popular midfield options this week. So let me know who you're buying. Did any of you go early on buying potentially Trent or Jared Bowen, and are you planning to sell them again before the deadline? Any questions you have about your team in the comment section down below. There will be an updated team selection video for myself and what I'm going to do with all those injured players tomorrow, Thursday morning, and then a final video on Friday morning before a deadline stream on Friday evening. Content coming at you thick and fast. So if you are new around here, subscribe to the channel, like the video before you go, and I'll be back again very soon.